Hey, everybody, welcome to this episode of Think Business. Looking forward to talking to Stan Bernard. Stan, it's great to have you on the show. I'm looking forward to talking to you because I love talking about branding and I love talking about how a brand and a company can transcend. And that's what you are all about. You are the author of the book, Brands Don't Win, but New Transcenders Change the Game. You are internationally recognized, award-winning global competition consultant, keynote speaker, published author, as we talked about, president of Bernard Associates, and the creator of the Transcender system. You're formerly a senior fellow at the Wharton School of Business, and looking forward to talking with you about just you, business, your book, etc. But let's talk about Wharton for a minute, right?
Sure.
I mean, Wharton School of Business, one of some will say, if not the best school of business. What's one takeaway from being at Wharton? The number one takeaway?
Yeah. Brands don't win.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. So your one takeaway was, and then you wrote a book about it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And let me explain. When I went to business school, I actually went to business school at Wharton following actually getting my medical degree. I was planning to be a surgeon, decided that I preferred strategy over surgery. So I switched gears, went to the Wharton School of Business, which was terrific. They had an outstanding program there. But what I noticed was that the focus was totally about playing and competing with only one competitive approach, and that is branding.
Yeah.
And I had grown up as a kid watching many sports teams. Okay. So I watched, everything from the legendary Paul Bear Bryant at Alabama. He had a winning system. He became the winningest college coach. Later on, Nick Saban, his much later successor at Alabama, had the process, a winning system. He had gotten that process partly from Bill Belichick, who had his, do your job system. So I came into Wharton both with an idea that, there's lots of different ways to compete in sports. So there must be lots of different ways to compete in business. And I went to Wharton, and we basically, the marketing classes and pretty much all the business focused on competing in only one way, which is branding.
Yeah.
And so right away, I'm like, guys, there's got to be a better way. And many people don't even realize branding is over 3,000 years old. I mean, the ancient Greeks used it. Okay.
Well, wait, before we get into the ancient Greeks, I want to ask you a couple of questions, right?
Yeah.
So you said a couple of things that I just want to kind of dive into because I think it's really interesting. Here you are an MD about to be a surgeon, and then you decide to go into branding, which falls into the creative marketing element of things.
Yeah.
And so that, talk about being able to use both part of your brains. I shouldn't say most, but there are many doctors that are not good business people. They don't teach you business in med school or law school traditionally. And so how did you pivot to that? Because I think when you said that, I would think a lot of people would be like, wow, that is really interesting. You don't hear that a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I realized that one of the reasons I wasn't as interested in surgery is because honestly, it's the same thing. You basically do the same procedure, gallbladder, hysterectomy, whatever type of procedure you're going to do. And that was boring to me. I wanted to go to a space where I could be more creative. So I realized right away, yes, I appreciate that. But medical school gave me a couple very important insights. You asked me what Wharton did. And medical school, number one, it taught me that you have to challenge.
Yeah.
You cannot, as a physician, just accept another doctor's diagnosis. Okay. Because you make assumptions about a patient, that patient can be harmed potentially or even die, right? So number one, I came to Wharton and to the business world with an idea of, okay, everything's challengeable, all assumptions. Okay, we can't assume branding is the only way to compete. The other thing medicine did is it basically gave me the 3-step approach of evaluate a patient, okay, history, physical, etc., make a diagnosis, figure out what's wrong, okay, and third, then basically come up with a therapeutic treatment plan. Well, business is the same way.
Yeah.
We do the same thing. It's the same 3-step approach. So I actually felt that medicine, coupled with my business background, really put me in a position to look at the branding, marketing, and more importantly, the business world in a very different way.
Yeah.
And that's why I probably could challenge this concept of branding being the only way to compete.
We're going to get into that, but I just want to set the stage on one more thing that I'm noticing
Yeah.
is the way you went into Wharton, the way you look at your medical schooling, the way you look at branding. You're very open-minded. As a business coach, I find that whether I'm coaching solopreneurs or someone in the fortune suite or anything in between, right? Whether it's a C-level owner,
Right.
leader, manager, salesperson, they get the best. The people that get the best results with me, I think I'm great at what I do, but the people that get the greatest results are the people who are open-minded, right? The
Absolutely.
people, right? And so I think that is a missing link that people don't think about today. It's very easy to make a quick decision, but to surrender and be open-minded, I just want to kind of talk about, seems to come naturally to you, but how do you recommend people just pause, be open-minded, and because that's how you can pivot within alignment.
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely. And obviously, you've been very successful in your coaching, and you absolutely getting people to be open-minded and think in an open-minded way is arguably one of my biggest challenges as a
yeah,
consultant. When I come into organizations that are struggling because they're basically playing the same branded game, they're not meeting their projections, they're getting beaten by competitors that might have even inferior products. I make it clear that ultimately this is change management.
right,
The Transcender system is a process that we can talk about in a minute, but at its core is we have to change minds. The same
right,
way you're changing minds, I have to change minds to literally change, as I started to talk about, over 3,000 years of history, change
right,
how people are brand washed, as I say, okay,
correct.
to thinking in an open way. Now, how do I do that? The best way I do it is I show them competitive examples. I show them case studies of how competitors similar to them, either in their exact industry or analogs of their products, I show them those case studies and I show them how they're using this transcender system
Yeah,
in a way that allows them to win, okay, and win big. You talk about thinking big, I talk about winning big. So
good.
that's a big part of it, and it takes time. What's interesting, I find, is the longer people have been in their business, their industry, and marketing, whatever it may be, the more difficult it is to change their minds.
Yeah, the more closed-minded you get.
Yeah,
Yeah,
executives are actually the bigger challenge than the people that just came in the industry, first year associates, analysts, whatever. The executives are the ones who I really typically have the biggest challenge with.
yeah, and it's interesting, and I'd like to know your opinion on this. One of the things I find is whether I'm doing a keynote, a group training, one-on-one, it doesn't matter. Sometimes the simplest things create such a powerful shift and open up the mind. And
Yes.
so when we talk about change, you and I think we're on the same page.
Mhm.
Change management, change, being open-minded. You just have to be open-minded, like 0.001% to really surrender, because I shouldn't say that. You have to be open-minded 80 to 100%, but it's only the one sliver of thing that you can hear, maybe a different word, a different epiphany that shifts everything 0.001%, and all of a sudden you've gotten into the 21st century.
You know what, John? You hit on something really important, and that is that when I basically try to change the minds of my clients, I do it with a neuroscience.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is again where my medical background has helped me immensely. I use a cognitive methodology called framing,
Uh-huh.
cognitive framing. To change people's minds, I basically literally have to change the frame of reference through which they look. So you
Right.
have glasses on right now. What I do is I metaphorically take somebody's glasses off and I put on a new pair of lenses
Yeah.
so that I focus them and force them to look through my frame of reference,
Yeah.
which is the transcender system versus the older traditionalist branding system. So
Yeah.
that is the number one way I change people's minds. And in fact, that's the foundation for how politicians, the best companies, as well as some of the best advertising
Yeah.
companies do this. It's
Yeah.
this cognitive framing.
Yeah. Well, we're going to talk about that. I just want to share one thing. One of the things I do
Mhm.
this a lot of times, especially when I'm doing group trainings and keynotes, is I will always incorporate within the first 10 minutes a 1 to 2 minute, what I call silent executive time or meditation. So
Mm.
everybody can raise their frequency and vibration by getting present and creating that space and kind of getting rid of kind of thought patterns that don't work for them. So
Yeah.
I kind of prime them on how I want them to
Mhm.
think and then give them a moment to kind of like really get into that space. So
Interesting.
yeah,
Interesting. And I probably do the opposite, John. I instead of getting them quiet, I do shock therapy.
yeah.
I
Well, I
literally
mean,
do shock therapy. I
yeah,
right away come out and I say, "Here's what your competitor's doing. Here's how they're winning."
right.
Boom, boom.
Well, I
And
do a little bit of that too, but
yeah,
then I take them down
yeah,
so they can get
interesting.
internal and become aware. So I
Yeah,
find they hear it. Okay, so let's talk about you.
yeah,
So let's talk about the difference between branding and transcending, right? Because
yes,
that's a lot of what you talk about. And
right,
so, what I think if somebody, I think business, I think business listener right now is thinking, well, what's the difference?
yeah.
Yeah,
So I think everybody's familiar with branding. Okay, branding. The idea is basically you create a brand and you differentiate the brand, usually based on different features or benefits, and often supported by heavy advertising, promotion, sales reps, etc. I think everybody's
yeah,
very familiar with the brand concept, all the different aspects of branding, brand logos, brand names, brand equity, etc., right? What I realized over the last 4 decades in studying competition, both inside the business industry as well as outside, particularly looking at politics, is that the best competitors do not win with their brands. They do not lead with the brand.
yeah.
They lead with a campaign agenda. So the Transcender system that I've developed, the three-step powerful practical system I developed, is based actually on political campaigns.
I was going to say it sounds like a political camp. Yeah.
Right. Because I realize products today are elected, not selected. So as
Mm,
a result, what companies like Peloton, Amazon, Starbucks, Nike, these leading companies do is they lead with a campaign agenda, very much like a U.S. presidential candidate.
yeah.
In 2008, Obama led not with Vote Obama, he led with change, change,
Yeah.
change, change. And then he followed with the brand. Okay. If you believed in change, then he was the change candidate. 2016, everybody knows, again, put aside politics, everybody knows Trump's forward campaign agenda: make America great again, make America great again. He could have led with Vote Trump. He was a brand, but he didn't. He said basically, make America great again, repeated it. And if you believe that he was the one to make America great again, then you would vote for Trump. So I basically model the transcender system off of what political candidates do. So that's the first major difference, is that transcender companies, they lead with the campaign agenda, follow with the brand.
Yeah. Yeah. And so
And you can,
define that a little bit more what a campaign agenda is,
yeah,
in Reader's Digest terms.
yeah. The simple way to think about the campaign agenda is that it's the game you want to play.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So make it simple. In basketball, you might have one team that wants to be a fast break team, and they want and the other team they're competing against wants it to be a half court team. So whichever team can force the other will onto to their rival, they force them to play. In the case of a fast court team, hey, if you can make them play a fast court game up and down, and you have the better, faster athletes, you win. Well, the same thing happens in business. Starbucks forces competitors to play its game.
Yeah.
So, for instance, a lot of people assume Starbucks has won because of its brand name, right? I mean, everybody knows Starbucks.
Everybody. Yeah.
Everybody knows their logo. Everybody knows their cups, etc. Well, Starbucks actually the first 16 years tried to win with branding. They basically had the brand logo, the brand name, the brand cups, the brand coffee. They were only adding one store per year. Howard Schultz in 1987, 16 years after Starbucks started, acquired the company and said, we're not going to play this coffee branded game. I'm going to change the game. The game's going to be 3 words: the third place. His campaign agenda for the company was, we're going to become the third place between home and work in America, which is why you have Starbucks on one side of the highway on the way to work, on the other side of the highway on the way home from work. It's why they're in transportation hubs, corporate centers, etc. When he did that, the company went from adding one store per year to adding 1,350 stores per year.
Yeah.
He totally changed the game. The game was not about branded coffee. It was about the coffee shop. specifically the third place, which was his agenda, and Starbucks was therefore the third place experience.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah. And what I love what you're talking about is the thinking and the strategy and the creativeness that goes beyond, okay, where can we fit into somebody's day where there is pain that they don't even know? Right. And so, or they may know, but maybe they don't know. So I don't think people were thinking, God, I wish there was a coffee shop that I could go in between work and home. But there was a market for there, but nobody could really see it. Right.
Right.
Which is why I think people need to work with coaches, consultants, brand transcending experts, because to pull out the simplicity of that is a multi-million, potentially trillion-billion-dollar idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're so right.
Yeah.
I have found that, first of all, I see companies that do this, that take this approach, the transcender approach. I've seen everything from smaller companies to Fortune 100 companies literally increase their value.
Yeah.
Not just sales, their value by billions and billions of dollars.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Because it's such a transcendent takeoff. But this idea of you playing your own game, right? And coming up with something that in many cases, it's not an unmet need.
Yeah.
You know, in the traditionalist world, and there's many differences, hundreds of differences between a traditionalist branding model versus the transcender model. Traditionalist model, it's all about unmet needs and let's go and do market research with customers. Starbucks never would have come up with that idea by doing market research.
No, because it's like asking, it's like, they talk about, if you asked people what they wanted, if Henry Ford asked people what they wanted back in the day, they would have said faster horses. They didn't know they needed it. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Steve, I was going to say, Steve Jobs is classic.
Yeah. I was just, we are in a decade right now, right? As we record this live on November 24th, 2021.
Yes.
We are in a decade where pre-COVID studies are showing, which these numbers I think have been accelerated, that by the year 2030, 85% of the jobs that exist don't exist today. And I believe that from the years 2025 to the year 2030, the technology that's going to be even invented, that's going to accelerate all of that, is going to change the game. You look at retail, and in your book, you talk about Amazon and things of that nature, but you look at the face of retail, CVS closing 900 locations. That's just as of today. You look at the face of retail and e-commerce post-COVID specifically, the world is changing faster than I think people can even comprehend.
Yes.
And so my question to you is, how do people keep up? How do you forecast out far enough to know where that market is? And then how do you go to market before somebody beats you to it?
You don't. Let me explain what I mean by that. You don't basically try to figure out where the market's going. As a transcender, you create the market.
Mm-hmm.
You push the market to where you want it to be. It's very much
you create the space.
That's right. You create the world. You create the game, as I call it, or the agenda that you want to play. Okay. Amazon absolutely created their own game. Peloton has created their own game. Okay. These were not unmet needs. They created their own game. They create their own future. Okay. And they think and go big, and we can certainly get into that. But this is a really important difference between the transcender system and traditionalists. Traditionalists are basically trying to stay ahead of their competitors. Do we have a competitive advantage or two in our product, or can we come up with something that's slightly better? That's not what transcenders do. They're not looking for incremental or evolutionary changes. They're looking for revolutionary game changes, right? So these companies, that's why they're the leaders. I mean, if you look at the transcenders, many of these companies are Amazon, Apple, Peloton, Google, etc. Some of the biggest companies as well as smaller companies, but they're winning because they basically are forcing the future on everybody else. They're not trying to forecast it.
Yeah. Let's talk about the small business owner for a minute, right? Because we're talking about the monsters that, my wife and I were talking yesterday, how much the world has changed. We don't run errands anymore. Everything we buy is through Amazon. And if Amazon, it's PayPal and free return policy. It's like our Saturdays and Sundays when we met over 20 years ago, they were for running errands, right? We don't, Instacart will get us our groceries. I mean, it's pretty, I love it, but it's a little unfortunate at the same time.
Yeah, good thing that you guys met with over a grocery cart. That's awesome. Really?
Right, no, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, we didn't meet over a grocery cart. But here's my question. What does the small business person,
Yeah.
right, do
Yes.
today to keep up with the big companies that have the billions and billions of dollars? You know, a big company can lose 20, 30 million in a day. A
Yeah.
small company cannot.
That's right.
So how does the small company grow in today's world?
The Transcender system actually is almost designed for the small company,
Okay.
because in the traditionalist world, it was the companies that had the most money for advertising, promotion, sales reps. They basically had a military campaign. They overwhelmed smaller competitors, right? But in the Transcender world, it's not a military campaign. It's an election campaign. I mean, Trump spent the least of anybody in his election in 2016 and yet won. Why? Because it's an election. You don't have to spend as much money. It's not about
Yeah.
money. So therefore, you have companies like Let Me Shine. Let Me Shine, a 26-person company based in Austin that has a campaign agenda of clean, freak, clean. So they have better for you, home, non-toxic, citric acid-based products. They compete against P&G. P&G has 99,000 employees around the world.
Yeah.
Let Me Shine has 26. Let Me Shine is more than holding their own in the dishwasher detergent market with basically their offerings. And they're spending a fraction of the
Yeah.
money. They have virtually no sales force, right?
Yeah.
Relatively speaking. So this levels the playing field. So Transcender system is ideal for basically startups. So let me even take it to a one-person startup. I had a man come to me who basically was a private wealth advisor, was starting his company, and he had worked at the traditional big banks, and he was starting his own firm, a boutique firm, and he basically came to me, and I worked with him. And over time, I noticed that he did investing in a way where he was zigging and everybody else was zagging.
Yeah.
So, for instance, his portfolio would go down when the market went up, and up when the market went down. And this is totally counterintuitive to me. It didn't make sense. So I asked him, and he said, "Well, here's how I do it." And I'm basically trying to go ahead of everybody else and be ahead. And I said, this sounds like to me like counter investing. And that became his agenda. Once he used that agenda, he basically, every time he does any type of presentations, he wrote a book, Counter Investing. His company has taken off. He's got multiple times the number of clients because he just keeps talking about counter investing. And as soon as he says that one word to a potential client, right away they say, "What do you mean?"
Yeah. That's what he owns. Yeah.
That's right. He owns it, and it allows him to compete against the biggest of the big banks, the Morgan Stanleys and others.
Yeah. I love it. Yeah. A word I use in mine is stuck, right? Successful and stuck. So I get clients calling me all the time saying, new people calling me, "Hey, I'm stuck."
Yes.
Great. What can I do for you? All right. Stan, this was great. I definitely want to have you back on the show. I could talk to you for hours about this, and there's so much more we could dive into. Let's do a quick speed round. Favorite book and why?
The Celestine Prophecy.
One of my all-time favorites. I read it 25 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. It's all about the positive forces, right?
Yeah.
Seek energy, positive. And that's what I encourage my clients to do. Be very positive.
Right. Everything happens for a reason, and the universe is working for you. Yes. That's one of my Pressfield. I can't remember the name of the guys who wrote it. Something, I think, not Pressfield, Corn. I can't remember the name, but it's the great. Yeah. Yes. Best piece of wisdom you've ever received?
Best wisdom I've received is 5 words or fewer. 5 words or fewer.
I like that.
I
like that.
And that's all people can remember. 5 words or fewer. That's all we can remember in our short-term memory now. We're down from 7 plus or minus 2 chunks of information. Yeah.
All right, good. So last question then, based on that, define yourself in one word.
Transcender.
Okay. I love it. Tell everybody where they can buy your book, how they can connect with you, get a hold of you, all that other great stuff.
Absolutely. brands.don'twin.com. That's where you can read about the book. You can take a quiz. Are you a traditionalist or a transcender? You can download the first chapter, and you can also purchase the book. brands.don'twin.com. And I'll just maybe finish by saying, if you want to compete, then brand. You'll have plenty of competitors. If you want to win, then transcend.
I love it. That's a great way to end. Stan, I can't thank you enough. This was really a great talk. I think really empowering too, right before Thanksgiving. Our team is going to repurpose this and everything of that nature. So this was great. Think community, if Stan can help you, check out his book. Stan, I appreciate your time. Thanks so much. Have a happy Thanksgiving to you and your family.
You too. Thank you, John. Appreciate it.